Hey guys, it's Kashi. Sorry for the stall in videos. I was on vacation for a week, and I want to get back and beat a dead horse and talk about Dantes' tweet. More specifically, I want to talk about one thing. My last video, I mentioned I think he's wrong about a couple things. Here's why, yada yada, showed some statistics, and comments had some really interesting points and things I want to talk about. Very specifically, one thing that came up in both Dante's tweet and a number of the comments I saw was that it is harder to solo carry games. That's true, and I want to start talking about why, because I think it's really interesting. Um, One of the things in League of Legends that has always existed is opportunity cost, and I'm going to use that word a lot. Opportunity cost meaning when you do one thing that is positive, you miss out on doing another thing that is also positive. Uh, Jungle is the best example of this. You spend time invading, you're not taking your own camps. You're ganking, you're not doing either. You're taking objective, you're doing none of it, right? Um, and so jungle's already always had a high opportunity cost, which means the decisions you make have more obvious negatives because they're resources you're missing out on. This is also a positive because it means that high skill jungle players, especially in terms of macro and game understanding, make the best decision more often, and they get to do it more often than laners. Best mage player will often just sit mid and get 11 CS a minute for 10 minutes, right? Like, that's good. But if the jungle player can win the game off 5 good decisions before the mid laner gets a chance to make his second recall, that's a lot of influence. That's also why people say jungle and support are by far the two most influential roles in the game, because they get to do that the most. They get the most opportunity cost macro reward, right? So the problem with League now, pretty obvious since I'm talking about opportunity cost, is that there are too many opportunities. Too often, too many people have to make too many decisions in a game. And the reason for that is the increased number of objectives. Currently, for like new objectives over the past, 6 to 8 years, we have gotten grubs. We've gotten 2 grubs. We've gotten crab, which is not really an objective, but it was for a while. We've gotten plates, which have existed a couple different ways. We've gotten enhanced dragons. We've gotten herald. We've gotten otacon, and we've got massive, like slow but large increases to the power of baron. Right. So now we have a flow that looks like this: game start, minute 30, game starts, 3.5 minutes of downtime. And in order: dragon, grubs, grubs, dragon, herald, dragon, otacon, dragon, baron, dragon, elder, typically 10 objectives. During that whole time, plates are up for half of it. Towers still matter just as much. Minions matter just as much. Jungle camps are still spawning every 2 minutes. There's so much on the map. And it means that every time you do something, with very few exceptions, there's something you're not doing. You might notice in the background, I have my camera on my friend playing Scion. There's a reason why. So opportunity cost has become something you are measuring constantly in this game. Because you are always thinking, if I move to get vision, if I move for an invade, if I move for an objective, I'm giving something up. Normally that wasn't as big a deal because you would know what you were giving up. Now you have to be thinking, like, well, if grubs are coming up at 13 minutes, dragon's coming up at 12, I have a Shyvana, but Shyvana's on the top side right now and it's 11:50, so she can't start it. And plates are still up. I have 3 major objectives I have to play for. And if I'm a mid laner, oh my god, my hand. Those 3 objectives are plates, grubs, dragon, and I have to consider all of them. If I'm a jungler, I'm caring about the same thing, but from a totally different perspective. I don't want my idiot mid laner to let their mid laner get 4 plates for no reason, but I really, really want the grubs because they're really good for pushing and they give me XP. But I also want dragon because my opponent, my Shyvana, is going to get more from dragon than anyone else on the map. These kinds of dilemmas exist all the time. Champions like Scion are incredible split pushers, and they change the way that you look at opportunity cost, but only if you're thinking about it, right? If you have a lethality Scion, if you have the boss on your team, like actual the boss, Grubs and Herald are amazing because you know how much he can do with them. If you know you have a pretty good Scion, I've got a friend who's like a mid-diamond Scion player, I want to give him Grubs, and that changes the way that I look at the game, but I'm still, in return, then I feel like I'm giving up even more when I do something else because I'm willing to pay a little more opportunity. I'm willing to give up more resources on the map to get the resource I know matters, right? That changes all the time, every game. And so there's constant mental fatigue from the decisions you're having to make. It's also one of the reasons I think that Boss is so good at champions like Scion, like Gragas, because they are better at like changing the way you evaluate opportunity cost. They clear waves in very frustrating ways. They lower your ability to make decisions by like either shutting out team fights on champions like Gragas or on his weird off-meta like high clear builds like Lethality Scion and API Relia. You can't even touch the wave properly without first having to deal with him. And that's like he becomes another objective on the map, right? you can see how Scion does that. You can watch, in the background footage. Every time he dies, he just gets more minions, gets more waves, and you just don't lose as much for going on him. He changes the way you evaluate ganking him as an opportunity. So there's more opportunity cost. Now, on paper, that feels like characters should be able to carry more, right? Like, okay, Dantes is a fed Hecarim. Well, if he makes the right decision more often, that means he's going to win even more, right? So why doesn't he have 100% win rate if I'm right? Well, the problem is that the opportunity cost thing with decision making means that the all 10 players' decision making matters more. It is probably even easier than it ever has been to reach a 70% win rate if you're very, very good. It's also harder than it ever has been to reach a 100% win rate, because more and more and more often, people's bad decisions are making more of an impact on your game, right? Because there are more opportunities. And in the old days, players would flock to the best player, make their play, and it would be good. Now there are so many objectives and so much source of everything, gold and power and tempo on the map, that if you just move to the best player all the time, you're probably going to lose the game because you're missing out on so many opportunities. Like, while two people are taking grubs, if you're forcing, enemy top jungle to 2v2 your top jungle, but your jungle is Dantes with a 3-camp, 2-kill lead, he's probably going to win, so you need to be mid pushing towers. If they 3v2 it, then you're getting plates while they skirmish the grubs, and you can just move later, right? But that's not how the game used to be thought of, and that is another thing you have to hope somebody understands, right? It also requires trust in your teammates. You have to know that your teammates can accrue resources correctly, and in solo queue, you just don't do that. It's also why I think the game is now more of a 5s game and less of a solo queue game. And in essence, what I'm saying, in case that didn't come across, Dantes is right. The game is harder to carry. Top Challenger players still have incredible win rates when they hit the top of Challenger, but you don't see people do what you would see, for example, a lot of Draven, Kassadin, Kha'Zix one-tricks in Season 5, 6, 7 do, where they just made it to Challenger without losing. 40, 50 games, congratulations, you're there, 0% loss rate. Silence used to do it on Yi, like Yi Tarek doing, right? You just can't anymore. Like, you really just can't. So what does that mean for players? It means that decisions get punished more. There's a fatigue. There's a constant feeling of, God, something is going to go wrong because I just can't make every decision perfectly. I don't have information about my teammates. I don't have information about the game perfectly, especially if I'm lower elo. I don't understand properly what my teammates are doing or what their champs do. And this is, I don't think this is an insult. I'm sorry if it comes across that way, but like, if you're a lower ranked player, you're probably also a player who spent less time playing and studying the game. You don't know what Gragas does that well. You don't know what the characters you don't play do that well, right? You have probably really good knowledge of 2 to 5 characters in the game. You're like, oh yeah, Yasuo can win this, Yasuo can lose this. What the hell does Soraka do? I'm a mid laner. So, decision fatigue. How do you reduce it, right? What does Riot do about this? There are a couple things. One is to change the... Well, so what you have to do is lower the amount of times you have to measure opportunity cost. You can do that by changing objective timers. The easiest one is lowering the number of objectives or lowering their impact. Not necessarily a good idea. I think it's good that you get rewarded for doing things besides just sitting on towers, because for years the best way to play has been to push towers. But what if there was only one grub? What if dragons spawned every 8 minutes instead of 5, right? That's a lot less pressure on the bot laners to skirmish mid-game. Lowers the power of engaged supports because there's not as much team fighting, and sieging is better. Sieging being better means that defense, like, I don't know, playing Janna and just like ulting people off towers every other push is like really frustrating, right? Anivia's good, and because those things are good, engage is worse. Maybe breaks some of the like ultra stale same 3 to 5 engage supports that we see in pro play all the time. It's like, oh, look at that, it's Rel, Maokai, Alistar, Leona again. So that's a thing they could do, right? They could lower the objective's power, right? Make grubs, and specifically their health, right? Make them taken faster, so that if you are already a certain distance away from the objective, you can simply say, I'm not even thinking about that because I can't get there before Udyr deletes them. Udyr still takes objectives quickly, but there's a big difference between Dragon having 6k health and 4k, right? They could also just raise the reward for taking towers again, and specifically I think what they could do is make minions stronger. Gives you natural push, which means towers lean into other objectives instead of just into, like, winning. It's kind of like in a board game where your goal is to get everything except your victory points at first. You need to accrue resources somewhere else so that the resources can turn into victory points. Let me turn the objectives into towers, and then the towers into games, or into wins, is what's happening right now. Do it the opposite way. Make towers push your minions so that it's easier to, like, get objective bonuses. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud, right? The point is that Riot can and should do things, something to make the game less tiring to play, make it less frustrating when you lose, and make it so that there's a better like chance that players like Dantes, if they play really well and get fed every game, can win every game. I don't know if it's objectively too much of this, right? Too many objectives, too much opportunity cost, if there's too much individual ability given to champions. And that's what I want to talk about in my next couple of videos. But for now, I'm going to leave it at this. I want to know what everybody thinks. Like, what kind of things could be done to change the way that we look at objectives? What kind of things could be done to make it less frustrating when your team makes the wrong decision and you can't take what you want to take, right? Yeah, that's it. See ya.